through folk music. I always liked folk music. Folk music always spoke to me. That's how I came to Israel too. It's the same thing. I loved the music. It spoke to me. It tells a story, and it gives the spirit of a people, I think, in a way that no other music can. It's not contrived. It comes from the people, and it was that music that drew me to the Balkans in general, and to Macedonia in particular. There was something about the Macedonian music that was so strong and vital that I felt there had to be something deep and beautiful there to see. And I go by my feelings.
Ова е Нил Фолберг, денес 71 годишен американски фотограф кој живее во Израел. На неговите прекрасни фотографии од Македонија од 1971 неодамна налетав случајно на интернет. Првата помисла беше: како е можно никој тука да не ги видел цели 50 години? Зошто досега немало изложба, студија, каква и да е промоција на постоењето на една ваква вредна збирка? Јас сум Илина Јакимовска. Во оваа епизода од подкастот Обични луѓе ќе се обидеме да ја раскажеме оваа долго одложувана приказна. Останете со нас. Пред 50 години Нил бил млад студент по општествени науки со силен интерес кон уметностите. Но во тоа време не било баш лесно да се меша дисциплините.
I was a student already at the University of California at Berkeley, and I had been studying sciences, and then I decided to switch to essentially photography. But as I described, it was an academic university. This wasn't a place to study art, and but it had other strengths. The strengths were, of course, that it had a good department of Slavic studies, including an excellent instructor in Serbo-Croatian, not Macedonian, but a very good instructor in Serbo-Croatian. And of course, Macedonia was at that time part of Yugoslavia. And I had gotten interested in the whole region because through folk music. I always liked folk music.
Нил го имал посетено Балканот претходно, престојувајќи месец и пол кај семејство во Сплит, Хрватска. Со пријател патувале низ регионот. Македонија го магепсала. За него тоа било земја на едноставни, честни луѓе, каде сакал да се врати. Но за тоа морал да смисли добар план.
When I decided to move to photography, I was looking for a project. I felt that the best thing you could do was to do a project. And Berkeley at that time was in the midst of a student revolution. You know about all this. They were interested in radical politics. I wasn't interested in radical politics, but I was interested in sort of a comprehensive view of education, where it wasn't just one thing you studied, but everything together to put it to make connections. So when I decided that I was going to do a photographic project, my first thought was, okay, I'd like to do something in Macedonia. So when the university opened up a program where you could make your own individual curriculum, it wasn't even an individual major within a specific college, you could actually essentially create a college and something that wasn't part of the university discipline. And I heard about that course. I signed up for it, and by that time I was connected with. I'd been studying privately with the American photographer Ansel Adams, is very famous, very well known, and there was another photographer of tremendous stature, less well known, at Berkeley, who was in the Department of Architecture and Design. His name was William Garnett. So I said, why don't we make a proposal that I should do a series of photographs in Yugoslav Macedonia, differentiating it between the parts that were in Bulgaria and Greece. I wasn't capable of dealing with so much at one time, and that would have been politically difficult, as you can imagine.
Со комбинација на добар предлог, солидни референции и чиста среќа, проектот на Нил е единствениот од 50 кој бил одобрен. По долга административна процедура на добивање работна дозвола, преку тогашниот југословенски конзулат во Сан Франциско, тој се качува на авион, најпрвин до Белград, потоа до Скопје. Во тоа време, кога се слетувало на Скопскиот аеродром, пистата најпрвин морала да биде расчистена од овци.
The first thing I did when I got there, I had met a family. The first time that I was in Macedonia, I had met a family there, and Kosta Bojinovski, who he had picked me up hitchhiking. He was a government driver, and he had a government car, and I was hitchhiking, I think, from around. We had come down in the mountains from Galichnik, and we were on the main highway, and we were heading towards Skopje, and he picked us up, myself and my friend.
With a government car.
With a government car, which I think he wasn't supposed to do. I guess we looked interesting, and he was a very friendly man, so he took me to Skopje, and he invited me to stay there, and he said, if you ever come back, so you can come stay with us. So he gave me the address, and I think I must have stayed I don't know where I stayed for the first couple nights, but then I went to look for him and asked if I could stay there for a little while until I found a permanent place to stay, and so the Bojinovski family took me in.
Семејството Божиновски живеело во поземјотресна барака во која немало многу место. Сепак, како добри домаќини му ја дале спалната, а тие се преселиле во кујна. Подоцна Нил изнајмува соба со помош од некој од горе, веројатно за властите да го имаат полесно на око. Во фокусот на Нил се нашле луѓето врзани за земјата, селата и малите градови. Списокот на места кои ги посетил ги вклучуваат Битола, Кратово, Струмица, Делчево, Прилеп, Демиркапија, Галичник, Булачани, Мавровјанови, Косоврасти. Импресивен список дури за млад патник низ мала земја. На времето ова значело многу возење со автобус, но и многу пешачење како искусен етнолог.
From there, I started just exploring the area wherever I could get to on bus. It was or by walking. I did a lot of walking, and I did a lot of riding the buses, and everything was an adventure. I mean, you could start anywhere. I had specific goals. I was trying to get inside of people's homes. I was trying to photograph at least some representative sample of the population. And I was interested in speaking with just ordinary people. I wanted to make a coherent statement, a visual statement. And so I came back to that idea that I started with, the idea of people on the land. And I sort of neglected the photographs that I made in a more urban setting in Skopje, which was, of course, the only real city in Macedonia. And I went and visited also all of the little towns. And I didn't develop everything as much as I would have liked to, but I was fascinated by the relationship between the villages and the market towns, where people took their produce and where they purchased the things that they couldn't grow or create for themselves. And I probably, if I had been there longer and had more time, I would have followed that connection a little bit more closely.
Бирократијата и надзорот од властите продолжиле. Сепак, Нил не го доживеал ова како малтретирање.
The thing that was very nice about all of Yugoslavia. It was a very human, easy place, and people were basically hospitable. And even the officials, when they became very difficult, never lost that human touch. So sometimes I had very uh, humorous encounters. Sometimes they were difficult and even occasionally a little bit scary, but but that humanity was never lost. So I began, of course, I had to have permission. You know, in those days, you had to have permission to photograph everything. If you wanted to photograph spomenici, what they called cultural monuments, then then you had to have a permission from the government. And if you wanted to photograph in the churches, you needed permission from each, or from in the religious spaces, then you had to have permission for from each of the different administrative authorities. And if I wanted to photograph people on the street, then I had to have permission from the government to be photographing. And just they expected tourists to go and photograph tourist sites. And you could make photographs of people maybe in Bitpazar, and you could make some photographs here and there on the street. But if you started getting too serious about it, then the police started asking questions. And usually they didn't ask questions. They just shouted Zabranyan and told you can't do it, or verboten. More often they likely cited that every 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 tourist with a camera was a German spy.
Ова е приказната од аспект на властите. Но што е со обичните луѓе? Каков печаток имал странецот за секојдневниот живот во тој период, за кој денес во Македонија не е можен консензус?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I was an outsider. Sometimes an outsider has an advantage, if not a total outsider. I was familiar with the culture. I had studied some anthropology. I had studied some history. I spoke at least one of the languages of Yugoslavia, and I picked up some basic Macedonian. And so I was an outsider, but I was an outsider with insight. I hope. I think. I'd like to think. And I can tell you that, despite the fact that it was somehow a little bit oppressive, the state security agencies were a bit heavy-handed with me, and I imagine they were more heavy-handed with citizens of Yugoslavia. So I can't say that that it wasn't a little bit oppressive, but I didn't see that people were too intimidated in general. Maybe if you were a very political figure, and your whole life was politics and human relations, or if you were a Macedonian nationalist, and I met several Macedonian nationalists, then maybe you would have found it very oppressive. But in general, I didn't feel that the state, that the Socialist Federated Republic of Yugoslavia was, at that time, in 1971, all that oppressive. I felt like it was open, it was comfortable. The standard of living in Macedonia was somewhat lower than Serbia and Croatia, but I didn't feel it was bad. It was very pleasant. Everything was easy. There was abundance. There was plenty of food. I didn't see that people were starving. You walk down the streets of the United States today, there are people on the streets. I didn't see that in Macedonia. The standard of living was not at that high American standard that I was living at, more or less. I was a student, but we had everything. My parents were fairly well off, but there wasn't that almost ridiculous abundance, but everything that was necessary was there, and people were outspoken. People told me what they thought. They weren't afraid to speak to me. I felt like Yugoslavia was a nice place. I was sorry when it broke apart. I was sorry when it broke apart because I was sorry for the Serbians and the Croatians who got into that terrible war, and there were so many atrocities. I couldn't dwell on it. I couldn't imagine it. It hurt me so much to see it from the side. I shut it out of my mind, and I was glad that Macedonia managed to stay, it seems like, mostly out of it.
Категоризирани, сликите на Нил од Македонија во 1971 покриваат неколку теми: селани и стопански активности, пазари, празници и прослави и портрети. Сите се во црно-бела техника. Зошто?
Sometimes the two-dimensional object, the artistic creation, has a good deal more power than the original item or event or subject. And I don't know exactly how that works. It must be something about the way that art or a photograph can take the essence of an experience or a place and translate it into something that's more easily accessible to the human imagination. So without trying to analyze that, there's something about black and white photography which is more abstract. It places something on a level where it's just tonalities of black and white and gray, and it sometimes allows the essence of something to come out better than color, which might be in some ways distracting. So at the time, I've worked a lot in color. I haven't worked exclusively in black and white, but I felt that black and white was suited to that subject. And there's also an American tradition of documentary photography from photographers like Dorothea Lange and Walker Evans, and you could go. It's a long list, and there's that tradition carries over into other places as well. But I think I was connected to that tradition as well.
Технологијата на тоа време, како и опремата со која располагал, го одредила и фотографскиот и човечкиот пристап кон луѓето на сликите. Фактот дека камерата била впечатлива и подобро функционирала на статив, значило дека Нил не бил невидлив.
I was a student. I didn't have a lot of equipment. I couldn't have a big budget. I brought one camera and one lens. It's what I had. I started out with a Praktica 6x6. I liked the medium format. I couldn't afford anything better at the time. I bought this East German camera. It had good optics, but mechanically it wasn't so nice. And I started out with that. I had trouble with it. So anyway, I went to Thessaloniki and looked for a better camera and ended up buying a Rolleiflex. So it's a medium format camera. It's big. It has a presence. It requires it's better with a tripod. So it wasn't just a picture a camera that you just snap away with and make thousands and thousands and thousands of photographs. It requires some kind of thought process, pre-visualization, where you anticipate what you want to photograph, you concentrate on it, and instead of making 100 or 50 photographs, now people with the digital, there's no limits. They can put thousands of pictures on a card or something. I had 12 pictures on a roll of film, and I had to make that count. One, because it was expensive, and two, because you can't take that many photographs. You have to think about it. It's a contemplative process, making photographs with a larger format. And so that meant that when I approached a person, they were well aware of me. I wasn't just sneaking around making candid photographs. I was a presence. And look, I was a strange presence. I looked different. Everybody could see that I wasn't from there. I would be in a public place and I wouldn't be invisible. I wasn't, people saw me and they either, and often I would set up a tripod in a public place and just wait for something to happen. Just wait to see who came to me, who wanted to talk, who was curious. And there were people who wanted to bother too, and the police were always a distraction. So by themselves. But the camera, I thought at the time that I was making photographs that were objective. I was looking at Macedonian society, and I was doing my best to give a balanced, objective view of it. If it wasn't comprehensive, it was because I just didn't have enough time to delve into it as deeply as I might have liked to.
Мојот контакт со Нил се случи во интересен момент, кога долго одложуваната книга со фотографии од неговиот проект во Македонија е во подготовка конечно да ја види светлината на денот. Во преговори сега е издавање и на верзија на македонски. Насловот на книгата е символичен.
I was trying, as I said, to be objective. But in the end, I see that if I look back at those photographs from 50 years ago in Macedonia, I'm not only looking back at Macedonia, I'm looking back at myself. And that was an amazing discovery. I thought that these were photographs of the Macedonians in the land, and that it was somehow divorced from me, or at least removed from me, like I was a window onto the culture, the land, the place, the people, and I was doing my best to make myself invisible. But to myself, when I look back 50 years and I look at those photographs, even though I'm not the subject of the picture, I can see myself looking back in this mirror. And that's why I call the book a mirror in Macedonian, because I discovered that it was me looking back through all of that. And just like those photographs were frozen in 1971, these people are from 1971. The scenes are from 1971. The physical culture is from 1971. And I too am frozen in those 400 rolls of film. Somehow I'm pictured there, kind of like a specimen that's been preserved. But I can't tell you how deeply this experience affected me. It was, what happens is that when you step outside of yourself, you do this all the time. This is your profession. You step outside of yourself and you go into somebody else's world and try and imagine what it's like for them, what they're thinking, what they're seeing. And I think we're capable of doing it. I think that you can step into somebody else's world. You can't ever leave yourself entirely, but you can use your imagination and know what it feels like to be in that person's place. And I don't think that's impossible. I think that's the essence of communication.
Значењето на овие фотографии сепак не е само историско, етнолошко или естетско. И не е интимно само за нивниот автор. Родена сум во 1971. Стара сум исто колку и овие фотографии. Јас и тие истовремено сме се нашле на овој свет. Така, гледањето во нив потикнува чувство на изминатото време. А освен фотографии, Нил сочувал и голем број други материјали, белешки, писма и аудиофајлови. Еден од нив е снимен во Лазарополе на Илинден, мојот именден и роденден.
I'm kind of jealous of your life, you know. Really, I don't know if you're aware that you had, I mean, from my perspective, you had a very rich and artistic, I don't know about private, of course, but in terms of artistic life, you had really very interesting company, first of all, context, and also opportunity to travel. So I think it's amazing, the whole story of it, especially because it relates to Macedonia, of course, but not only.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's been very. I feel like my life has been very, very special in that sense because I've been able to get out and look around and see other people, and the camera is an interesting tool because it kind of puts you in another status. You can walk into other people's lives and they accept you. You can walk into other people's cultures and they don't think there's anything weird about you being so interested in it if you're making photographs. If you started poking around and asking questions, they might get a little bit suspicious, but people are used. The camera's kind of an entry tool. So, and if you're curious and you have an imagination, then the possibilities are sort of limitless.
Во изминатите 50 години Нил Фолберг самиот ги има поместувано уметничките граници, испробувајќи се во други светови. Неговите дела вклучуваат фотографии од пустините и духовните наследства на Израел, Египет и Јордан, на историски синагоги низ светот, поврзувања со други визуелни уметности како францускиот импресионизам. Книга со наслов Небесни ноќи пак ги представува небесата и звездите и представува промена на фокусот на неговиот интерес од луѓето и нивните земски преокупации кон огромниот космос. Ова има врска и со едно негово хоби.
Ever since the period when I was at Berkeley, I've been sort of interested in astronomy. So I think that's my hobby. I'm an amateur astronomer. I have a small observatory in my house, and I go out and look at the stars. That's my escape now, especially during this year of Corona, which we've experienced all over the world. We've all been confined to the places where we live, and maybe inside and not outside so much. So I could just walk out on my porch and open up my observatory and go 50 million light years away to some galaxy in 10 minutes.
Ако погледнете во галаксија која е оддалечена 2 милиони светлосни години, вели Нил, вие всушност гледате 2 милиони светлосни години во минатото. На истиот начин, ако гледате во фотографија која е стара колку едно трепнување во небесно време, би можеле да видите не само какви биле нештата вистински, туку и како можеле да испаднат. Јас сум Илина Јакимовска, аудиомонтажа Бојан Угриновски. За целосен транскрипт и фотографии посетете нашата страница обичнилуѓе.мк. Целосно титулувана верзија со превод е поставена на YouTube каналот Обични луѓе.